UFC Seattle takes place this weekend, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my exact predictions for how I think every fight is going to play out on the card. So without further ado, let's get into the picks. As always, first I like to look at my past week's performance to see what we can improve upon, and last week we did pretty well. We went 8-4. We did not get the main event correct. We picked RoboCop. He did get 2 knockdowns on Cannonier in the first round. In hindsight, I probably would have picked RoboCop again, so not really too mad at that pick. Then we got Rodolfo Vieira. If you go back on both of my pick videos that I made last week, I was really trying to make the case to pick Petrosky. I just couldn't get behind it. And then Ketlin Souza, I mean, it was 1-1 heading into round 3. It could have been anybody's fight. It was a split decision win for Angela Hill, her first ever split decision win in UFC history. So how am I supposed to predict that? I'm not sure. Then Jesus Aguilar was, the long shot dog that I had as the Finn's hammerlock. He closed as a plus 500, and he loses a 29-28 decision victory. He won a clear third round on all the judges' scorecards. And in the first 2 rounds, if he just had a little more success with the guillotine, a little more success on the feet, maybe he could have snuck out a victory. Plus 500, not too upset with the pick considering he lost by a narrow margin. 8-4. Let's try to sweep at UFC Seattle. First fight on the card for UFC Seattle is Modestas Bukauskas taking on Raffael Cerqueira, and I did a lot of tape study on this card, to be honest, and this fight specifically, it's very hard to make a case for Raffael Cerqueira. He crumbled after 1 punch against Ibo Aslan, not saying I could take an Ibo Aslan punch, but in the UFC, if you're 35 years old and in your first ever fight against an actual good fighter is you crumble in the first 10 seconds, I'm not sure how I can back you with my money. Modestas Bukauskas as a minus 350 favorite is a humongous red flag, considering he's not the most durable guy. He did go out there and get a submission finish against Marcin Prachniow in his last fight, and he was handling Prachniow on the feet, and he even utilized some wrestling in that fight. So if that's the Modestas Bukauskas we're going to get here, I think he should clear Raffael Cerqueira. I actually like the over 1.5 as an interesting play. I don't think the lines have dropped. It is early in the week. A lot of people think, Modestas might go out there and get an early finish, but I think this might be an elongated type fight. I think Modestas is going to get takedowns here, potentially sprinkle his takedown prop as well, and ultimately I'm going to take him to win by decision. Next fight on the card is Nick Klein taking on Mansur Abdul-Malik, and you guys know me, I love chasing those big underdogs, and at first I did want to take a stab at Nick Klein, but the more you dig into the tape, the more he starts to, unravel over the course of his career. His only loss professionally against DAWG, he won the first round, but towards the end he started to gas, and round 2 he completely gassed out, and DAWG ended up getting takedowns, ended up finding a ground and pound finish. If you go back to his amateur career, he fought a guy named Niall Bartling, who's going to be important later in this video, but Niall Bartling was able to out-cardio him in the first round, and then Nick Klein gasses out in the second and gets the ground and pound finish. I think the same thing is going to happen here. Nick Klein is round 1 submission or bust. If he doesn't find the takedowns in round 1, he's going to gas out. And Malik has some UFC experience now, albeit it is against Dusko Todorovic, one of the chinniest guys in the division. He does have a nice win on the Contender Series against Wes Schultz, who has a similar build to Nick Klein. So ultimately, I think Nick Klein is going to fail takedowns in the first round, and I think he's going to gas out, and Mansur is going to find a round 2 KO finish. Next fight on the card is Ricky Simon taking on Javid Basharat. Now, this is another one where taking the underdog might not be the worst play. Ricky Simon is sitting at plus 230. He has the tremendous UFC experience edge. He's fought the way better brand of competition. However, at this point in his career, he is only 32 years old, so he is kind of young. But if you look over the trajectory of how his fights have been going, it hasn't really been the best. Okay, early in Ricky Simone's career, he relied heavily on takedowns, and over the past few fights, he just simply hasn't been able to get the takedowns, and when he's not able to get the takedowns, he just gets outpointed on the feet, and sometimes he gets KO'd. Like against Song Yadong, he got completely KO'd. Against Mario Batista, he was getting eaten alive with leg kicks at range, couldn't get any takedowns going. And against Vinicius Oliveira, yes, it does show that he has 2 takedowns against him, but Vinicius was just outpointing him and outstriking him from range the entire fight. And I don't see how this one goes any differently. Granted, Javid Basharat doesn't have the most power in his striking. You know, if he gets clipped once, the round could go to Ricky Simón based on power. But I think ultimately Javid is going to be the quicker striker here. I think the takedowns are not going to work for Ricky Simón. I think if anything, Javid actually might have success with takedowns of his own. And I think he's going to just outstrike and outland and outpoint Ricky Simón. This is going to be a pretty boring fight in my opinion. And I think Javid Basharat is going to do what he usually does and win a decision victory. Fight on the card is Nursultan Ruziboev taking on Eric McConico. Now, this is a short notice fight. Eric McConico is making his UFC debut and he's nearly 35 years old. Nursultan Ruziboev has the UFC experience edge and he has some pretty decent wins in the octagon thus far. His only loss being to Joaquin Buckley, and Joaquin Buckley is in the top 5 rankings of middleweight at the current moment. In that fight, Joaquin Buckley had success with takedowns, so you might think that Eric McConico might go out there and wrestle and grapple Ruziboev and potentially find a submission finish. That is a possibility considering that's basically how he's won his last 3 fights. He's just trying to get the fight to the ground. But if you look back at McConico's career, you look back at his 2 losses, it was back-to-back KO losses within 6 months of each other. He then took like a 3-year hiatus, and I think he just decided to go all in on the grappling and wrestling in that 3 years, because ever since then, all his fights look completely different. The first half of his career is him going out there swinging and banging, then he gets knocked out twice, and now all of a sudden he's a tremendous wrestler grappler. I think Ruziboev is going to expose that in this fight. McConico's wrestling, I don't think is going to work nearly as effectively as Joaquin Buckley's did against Ruziboev. And on the feet, I think Ruziboev, he was able to knock out Bruno Ferreira. So if you're able to knock out Bruno Ferreira, who's in the rankings as well, I don't see why you can't knock out Eric McConico, especially on short notice. So Ruziboev by KO is the pick. Next fight on the card is Jan Cutelaba taking on Ibo Aslan. Now, for me to pick Jan Cutelaba, I would have to trust that he's going to go out there and secure takedowns and win that way. He couldn't even do that against Ivan Arslan. He barely won a split decision against Ivan Arslan. Yes, he did go to takedowns later in the fight as the fight progressed, but there was multiple instances where Arslan was rocking Cutelaba on the feet, and I just don't like the IQ of Cutelaba. I mean, he does go out there and give us very entertaining fights, but from a picking and betting perspective, it's very hard to trust your money on a guy who you're trusting to get takedowns, but every time you watch him, he sometimes just doesn't shoot takedowns and gets into swinging and banging brawls. And against a guy like Ibo Aslan, who has tremendous power, I think this is just a matter of time before Ibo Aslan sleeps Jan Cutelaba. Now, Ibo Aslan, he has some decent takedown defense. He hasn't really been tested that much. Anton Turkalj was trying desperately in their last fight, and Ibo Aslan showed tremendous takedown defense improvement from their first fight because he did fight Turkalj in the past, and Turkalj got a rear naked choke finish, which is Ibo's only loss. So Ibo was able to rectify that loss. He was able to show he has good takedown defense. In his last fight, he beat Cerqueira, the guy who we previously mentioned, in 20 seconds. So in this one, Ibo Aslan is the younger, hungrier guy. Cutelaba has had tremendous damage over the course of his career. He's going to need to win via submission, via ground and pound, via decision, with takedowns working. And if the takedowns don't work, Ibo is just going to KO him on the feet. I don't think the takedowns will work as the fight progresses, so give me Ibo Aslan by round 2 KO. Fight on the card is Andre Fili taking on Melquizael Costa. And in this one, I just think that UFC experience is going to trump all. Melqui Costa has yet to be really tested at the high rankings in the featherweight division. His only wins have been Austin Lingo, which was a very low volume, heavy grappling match, and against Shilan Nursultan, who we all know Nursultan has one of the worst gas tanks in the featherweight division, and Melqui Costa was just able to outlast him and eventually find a rear naked choke. His losses are Thiago Moises, which granted it was on short notice, and Steve Garcia, who just completely sent him to the Shadow Realm. So it's kind of, his losses are on one end of the spectrum of types of fighters, and his wins are on the other end. He's only beating guys that really shouldn't be in the UFC, and he's losing to guys that are established UFC guys. So against a guy like Andre Fili, I feel like Fili is an established UFC guy. Melqui Costa's main attack is going to try to be grab Fili, get as close as possible, maybe piece him up with some kickboxing at range. But ultimately, I think Fili just has to avoid the submission defeat. I don't think he's going to get subbed here. Melqui Costa barely got it against Nursultan. It took him a couple rounds to do so. So against Fili, if he just avoids the takedowns, I think Fili's going to land the bigger shots. And ultimately, Fili's just going to win a decision how Fili does. Outpointing Costa, getting the better of the grappling wrestling exchanges, and just cruising to a UFC veteran decision victory. He's not even 35 years old, so picking Fili in the spot, even though it's a 7-year age difference, it's not the worst thing considering age. He's not 40, and he has a 3-inch reach advantage. That's enough for me. Andre Fili by decision. Before I continue giving my main card picks, I just wanted to go over last week's bets. Here are all the bets right here. We had Nazim Sadikov. We had a fat unit on him. That was a nice W right there. Jesus Aguilar, of course, we bet him by submission at plus 1100, and we also put a unit on him at plus 370. Both outcomes did not hit, obviously. If he got the guillotine win, that would have made piles, but unfortunately not. Cavalcanti, we took a shot at plus 1200 to win by submission. Never stood a chance, really. Thought maybe there would be some kind of grappling attack from Avilia, but not really. Walter Walker, we parlayed him with Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon fell out, so we just had 2 units on Walker. That was free money. Should have put a unit on him to win by sub. That was super free. We had another parlay. Jose Delgado to win free, and Cannonier and Rodriguez to not go the distance. Super free. Put 2 units on that. We won a fat unit and a half. Shabazian by KO against Budka. We've put a unit on that. That was plus 135. And then Vieira and Petrarski to go to the decision. I made the case for all these bets last week in my second video uploaded, so be sure to look out for the next video we upload this week. Before we continue, let's just get a little follower update. You know, on the Twitter, 646 followers. I think we gained 20 in the last week. On the Instagram, we gained about 15 in the last week. And on YouTube, we've kind of been stagnant at 945. So my imagining is if I insert this kind of promo in the middle of the video, potentially speaking, these numbers go up. So let's run it up. Brings us to the first fight of the main card. We have Alonzo Menifield taking on Julius Walker. Now, in this one, I see a lot of people taking the dog shot on Julius Walker. He is 25 years old, 12-year age difference between Alonzo Menifield and Julius Walker. However, Julius Walker's taken his fight, number 1, on short notice. It's been less than a week. Number 2, Julius Walker has never had a UFC fight. He's never had a Contender Series fight. He's never even fought at like any of the major regional promotions. He hasn't even fought at LFA. He's been fighting at this promotion called Synergy. I've never even really heard of that. Maybe call me a casual. Peak Fighting, you know, these promotions that, you know, not really hearing people come out of there. He's also only 6-0. He only has 6 fights in his professional record. He does have some amateur fights, but ultimately, if you look at this guy's tape, he's going to go out there and try to grapple Menifield. Menifield really loses to power punchers, guys that are going to be in his face punching. Julius Walker is not that type of guy. I think Julius Walker is going to gas out bad. I think Alonzo Menifield is going to put a veterans display here at UFC Seattle. I mean, Menifield has lost to Olberg and Azamat Mirzakhanov, both guys who are ranked in a light heavyweight division. Granted, it was both by KO. Granted, Alonzo is 38, and he has a 5-inch reach disadvantage. However, Menifield, if he just keeps his standing and avoids takedowns from Walker and just outworks him in the clinch, Menifield is going to win this fight. It's going to be very clean, and a lot of people are going to be like, oh yeah, Alonzo Menifield is him. I forgot. You know, he does have some bad losses on his record, like that Ovin St. Preux KO loss, that draw against Jimmy Crute where he got out-wrestled. He got 6 takedowns let up. But since that Jimmy Crute draw, he didn't even let up any takedowns to Crute in their second fight. And people have been struggling to take this guy down since then. And Walker's going to have to go all in the takedowns to win this fight. I just don't see it happening. I mean, I've seen some flashy moves from him. I think he threw a flying knee against Niall Bartling in one of their fights. But maybe some spinning back fist. But all these fights, I just see Julius Walker getting gassed out. And ultimately, I just see Menifield putting the veteran clinic on him. So I'm going to take Alonzo Menifield by decision. Next fight on the card is Gene Silva taking on Melsik Bagdasaryan. And yes, I'm going to be one of the 3%. Okay, it hasn't worked out the past few weeks, but that's not going to dissuade me from picking the biggest underdog on the card. I'm taking Melsik Bagdasaryan. I've been seeing some good training footage, okay? Melsik Bagdasaryan is a very good striker. He lost to Cutelaba by submission. It was a slip. He didn't get taken down by Cutelaba. He slipped. Cutelaba grabbed the neck. It was GG's. He's only had 1 fight since then, a big fat W against Tucker Lutz. Just outpointed him and outstruck him at a distance for the entire fight. And in this one, he's going to have the the height advantage. He's going to have the reach advantage. If this stays striking for 3 rounds, Gene Silva does have very good striking, but this is as even as it gets of a striking battle as I've seen in any of Gene Silva's fights. So Gene Silva, in order to win this, in order to cover the minus 600 price tag, we're going to have to assume that Gene Silva goes out there and hunts for takedowns. Now, we haven't yet to see in any of Gene Silva's fights him really hunt for takedowns. He's been very comfortable on the feet. He's been getting KOs on the feet. He got a KO against Drew Dober in his last one, even after breaking his hands. So I think Silva, in his mind, is going to be content with keeping this standing, and that's going to leave Melsik a lot of openings to win this fight. So ultimately, if Gene Silva doesn't chase takedowns, he will lose this by decision. That's just my opinion. Melsik isn't really chinny, and Melsik has great striking at a distance. And this is going to be a bigger cage, considering this is not the Apex. This is in UFC Seattle on a fight night semi-pay-per-view card. So for all those reasons, you know, Melsik might not win, okay? He's plus 450 for a reason. But if you want to take his plus 3.5, I think that slaps. I think he at least wins a round. And I think the line should be closer to Melsik plus 150. So that's enough for me to just take him straight up as a pick. I'm going to be putting a bet on him. Give me Melsik Bagdasaryan to beat Gene Silva by decision. Next fight on the card is Rob Font taking on Gene Matsumoto. And in this one, at first, I was going to blindly take Rob Font. You know, he put up a clinic against Kyler Phillips. It was quite the career turnaround. But if you do a little more digging, there are a little more red flags, okay? So against Kyler Phillips, he lost the first round very easily. He got controlled for the entire first round. It was rounds 2 and 3 where Kyler Phillips himself started to gas out. Rob Font started to close the distance. Kyler Phillips' main technique is either get it down to the mat or fight you at range. Rob Font's in your face. You can't do either of those things. Now, Gene Matsumoto is not like Kyler Phillips, okay? Gene Matsumoto throws with power. Gene Matsumoto's main attack is leg kicks. He doesn't really need to fight at range. He's really good at calf kicks. He's really good at side kicks. He's going to have a 3-inch reach disadvantage, which I think will actually allow him to land more leg kicks because Rob Font is going to end up winding closer to him because Rob Font's main attack is the jab, okay? If Gene Matsumoto is throwing the leg kick, Rob Font's throwing the jab, eventually Rob Font is going to be dissuaded from throwing the jab. Every time he throws it, he's going to get leg kicked. Matsumoto showed against Katona he can go 3 hard rounds and win a decision. Matsumoto has some takedowns in his back pocket. Rob Font doesn't have the best takedown defense. Sandhagen can control him for 5 rounds. Kyler Phillips controlled him for a full round. Who else here? Figueiredo had 4+ takedowns on him. The blueprint is there to beat Rob Font. Matsumoto might be a prospect. He might be 25. Rob Font might be the prospect killer. But ultimately, I think Matsumoto just has more paths to victory. Rob Font is going to have to replicate what he did against Phillips to win this, and I just don't think he can do that. I think he can land the jab, but Matsumoto's calf kicks are going to start to rise up, and I think the jab's going to happen less. There's going to be more clinching. Matsumoto takedowns. Give me Matsumoto to win by decision. The main event of the card is Brendan Allen taking on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Now, this is actually a rematch. They fought years ago at LFA for the championship in a 5-round fight, so it's kind of funny that they're fighting a 3-round fight in the UFC, but they fought a 5-round fight all those years ago. And if you watch back that 5-round fight, I know it's been multiple years since then. Maybe you can't take a lot from it, but Brendan Allen won the first round very clearly, and the next 4 rounds were just Anthony Hernandez ground dominance. Brendan Allen has this reoccurring problem against the best ranked guys in the middleweight division, and the reoccurring problem is he's able to win the first round, but then he just gasses out. His cardio goes off a cliff. Now, in this one against Anthony Hernandez, I think Brendan Allen will have success in the first round. I think he'll get a takedown. I think he'll have control and maybe potentially even win the first round. But as the fight progresses, I think Fluffy Hernandez is just going to out-cardio him, outwork him. I mean, against Michel Pereira, Fluffy Hernandez was just completely dominating him on the ground. His control is unmatched in this division from what I've seen so far. And Brendan Allen is a jiu-jitsu guard player. Against Imavov, he pulled guard multiple times. And I just don't like backing someone like that. I want someone that's going to go out there, keep moving forward, and grind for a finish. And Fluffy Hernandez fits all those things. Now, from a betting perspective, potentially you want to sprinkle Brendan Allen plus 3.5, his spread for him to win at least a round. I think Brendan Allen could win the first round, but ultimately Fluffy might be too risky of a parlay piece because I think he's going to surrender at least one round. If this was a 5-round fight, I'm parlaying Fluffy all day. I'm slamming him to win by decision or submission. But in a 3-round fight, the margin's going to be way closer, way thinner. But I still do think that Fluffy edges this one out. So give me Hernandez by decision. And that brings us to the main event of the evening. We have Henry Cejudo, the Triple C, taking on Song Yadong. Now, Triple C is on a 2-fight losing streak. He's 38 years old. Song Yadong is 27. All those factors right off the bat would make you want to pick Song Yadong. However, if you scroll back and you analyze Song Yadong's victories, it's not really the toppest tier of the division. It was against, Chris Gutierrez, who's mainly leg kicks or nothing. So if you can just avoid the leg kicks and land big power on Gutierrez, you'll win. That's what Yadong did. Against Ricky Simón. Ricky Simón has showed that he's not shooting as many takedowns as he used to, or not nearly having as much success. And Song just avoided takedowns and outworked Ricky Simón on the feet. Okay. Against Marlon Moraes, chinniest guy in the division, gets him with a KO. Now, his losses is Sandhagen. Sandhagen pieced him up at range and had success with takedowns. Peter Yan had success in the boxing and was able to get takedowns. I think Cejudo, this is a tremendous step down competition. This is a huge disrespectful line for Cejudo. Granted, Cejudo, he has technical striking, but he doesn't have the greatest power on the feet. But he is an Olympic wrestler, and Yadong does surrender takedowns. Now, Song might surrender more takedowns to a higher level striker because he's more focused on the striking, not expecting the takedowns, so the takedowns come easier. Cejudo might not have success with takedowns because he's not the best striker. Song's going to be all in on takedown defense, so Cejudo might have to win this one with a striking battle. Now, can Cejudo win a 5-round striking battle with Song Yadong? I low-key think that there's a chance he can. A lot of people think that because Song pieced up Ricky Simón for 5 rounds, that Ricky Simón is the same thing as Henry Cejudo. I don't think so. I think Cejudo, he has that championship experience. It's a 5-round main event. He's been in multiple of these. Song Yadong has been in one, but first time in front of a crowd for Song Yadong in a 5-round main event as well. I think Cejudo is just going to use his veteran savvy to win this. For you to take Song Yadong, you would have to think that Song Yadong is going to clip Cejudo, potentially knock him out. I don't think that path to victory is there for Song Yadong. I think this is going to decision 90% of the time. And if you're going to tell me 5-round decision, who wins, Cejudo or Song, I'm taking Song. I'm taking the former double champ to win a 5-round decision all day. So I think this is my only underdog pick. Let's see. Cejudo. I took Fluffy Hernandez. I took Gene Matsumoto. Oh, yeah, of course, Melsik Bagdasaryan. So we're taking Melsik, Cejudo. I took Alonzo, Fili, Ibo, Nursultan, Javid, Mansur, and Modestas. So the only 2 dogs we're taking are the 2 biggest ones. We're taking Melsik, and we're taking Cejudo. Thank you for getting to the end of another episode of Finn's Chats. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'm adding more flavor, more spice, more pepper to the videos as we go on. Be sure to catch my next video I dropped this week about my favorite underdogs. So let me know in the comments who your favorite bet is of the week, favorite pick of the card, and have a great day, you said.